All right. Hi, I'm Nikki Artipis, and I'm here to present my demographics about my school. I work in District 500, also known as Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, excuse me. And I work at Wyandotte High School as a science teacher. So a little bit about my school. My school is one of the only schools in the United States on the historical registry. We had our centennial birthday a couple years back, and it is just a gorgeous school. It looks like Hogwarts, and we are the Bulldogs. So to give some highlights about Wyandotte High School and our surrounding community. So again, we are in KCK, so we are on the Kansas side of Kansas City, and there are roughly about 153,000 folks in our lovely city, making it the third largest city after Wichita and Overland Park. We also have a large community, or I should say several communities of refugees from a variety of African, Asian, and Latin American countries here in KCK and the greater KC metro area. And our city has a medium to high racial diversity, which I think is awesome. So 52% of folks identify as white, 27% as Hispanic, 26% as Black, and there's a few smatterings of other identities hanging out. But those are our major ones here in KCK. So 17% of the city, of the surrounding community, is at poverty level, meaning that 1 out of 5.8 people falls under the federal poverty line, which is pretty high. As far as our school demographics go, 64% of our students identify as Hispanic, 25% Black, and 3.5 as white. And then we have that 7.5 as others. So that's Asian or a combination of something going on. As for our teacher demographics, this was difficult to find any specific numbers, but I do know that our district and in my specific school, we are heavily white educators, specifically white women or white AFABs or folks that were assigned female at birth. So there's that. There is a diversity issue there going on with our educators. There are a wide variety of languages spoken within our district and within our schools in general, which I will talk about here on the next slide. And currently at Wyandotte, we have somewhere around 1,800 to 1,900 children, or 1,900 students, excuse me. And that's going down a little bit every day as we kind of settle our numbers. So as far as our school climate in general, our school was opened in 1886, so we've been around for a hot second. We really focus on building student responsibility, and that is through modeling efforts through educators and other adults in the building. We strive for equity, and we are moving towards collectively standards-based grading, which is more mastery of skills than just getting grades. So as a little bit more on our student body here, so again, we have a high minority population. 96% of our students identify as Hispanic, Black, or of Asian descent. 46% of all of our students are emerging language learners, meaning there is some other language besides English spoken as the home language. And there are 63 different languages spoken in the homes of our students, which is pretty phenomenal. And that varies from Karenni to Spanish to all kinds of African languages, which it's pretty cool. As far as our socioeconomic status of our students and their families, 89% identify as economically disadvantaged, which goes along with that 17% of the KCK greater community falling under the poverty line. We have almost even split at our school of females and males, so 47% females, 52.9% males. And as for the age range of our students, our ninth grade classes are usually the biggest, with about 600 students and going on down, about dropping about 100 each year, to where at 12th grade we have about 250 kids in that class. So as for our academic information, our students have low rates of proficiency. So we've got 7% proficient in reading, 6% in science, 4% in math, and social studies data was not available for the most recent previous school years. So in spite of all of that, we have an 87% graduation rate at Wyandotte High School. So we work really hard with our kids to get them ready to get that diploma and move on. We have an average attendance rate of 90%, which is pretty good compared to some other schools in our district. And of our graduates that do go on to a four-year college, 77% of them get their degrees. They graduate, which is amazing. Less than 1% of our kids participate in AP courses, which is because we don't offer a lot of AP courses. We don't have a lot of resources for that at our school. We do have some specialty schools within the district that do that a little bit better than we can. But 14% of our students are enrolled in dual courses. So that means they're getting some sort of post-secondary credit for that, whether that is through KCCC or some other program, some other tech program. Our kids are participating in classes where they get credit inside the high school classroom and outside in a technical school or a community college. As far as accommodations go, we have our basic IEP programs and there are basic SIP programs, but we do not have any intensive SPED programs at Wyandotte High School. For those kids that do need a little extra help, they get sent to other high schools in the district that have those resources and have those folks that can help them out better than we can. As far as testing goes, our overall average for the ACT at Wyandotte is 15, which is about 5 points lower than the overall average, which is 20. And overall in our school, college readiness is below average. So on the next slide here, I believe, or maybe in a slide or two. No, so this is my reflection slide. So speaking on those previous slides, I would have to say that one of the big inequities within our school, and thinking about this culturally within our community, is we have a lot of emerging language learners, which is wonderful and beautiful, but we just don't have the resources to meet their needs, especially right now during a global pandemic where teachers are becoming scarcer and scarcer for various reasons. And programs are getting cut for specific reasons. So it is difficult to get our students on a, how do I put this? On average with other parts of the country that may not have as much diversity within their population. So it's difficult because we want to continue to respect cultures and how education plays out in the households of our students, but also we want to make sure that they're prepared to work in a country where a lot of employers recognize, English, and that's difficult. And it's difficult if you're not language proficient to get those other skills to be just proficient in different school topics, right? So that kind of falls into my reflection here of how do I be a culturally responsive teacher in this as a white passing, female passing individual? Because my background is varied. I do come from a family of immigrants, but again, I'm white passing where a lot of my students are not. So how, as I went through this, I thought about how can I be culturally responsive to these students and make sure that I am not only hearing and listening to them, but also acting on what they're saying and incorporating what they've got going on into our room. And then more specifically, how do I make science intersectional? Because not only from my personal experiences and doing research outside of this class in other ways, science doesn't have a great history with marginalized people. And I don't think that's often discussed in the science classroom about why there is distrust or there is dismissiveness of science because it's just more white folks telling brown folks what to do or doing stuff to them in the name of science. So how do I incorporate what needs to be happening, with what my students need to learn with making these connections, these intersectional connections of, okay, like, why is it that you and your family or your family, they don't support your progress in this class and all of that. And also just after reading the articles, I've just been thinking about what does it mean to be culturally relevant in a science classroom? So how do I make this science connect to my students? And I guess that goes back to the intersectionality as well. How do I incorporate not just US culture into the science classroom, but make sure to give real world phenomena that happen in other countries or may happen due to cultural practices and all of that stuff. Yeah. And then finally, I've been trying to reflect on how do I give ownership of our classroom to my students? How do I allow them to put their own culture into it and create this collective culture, not only within our classroom, but amongst each other? Because again, we have 64 languages being spoken in our school. So how do I get the students involved with not only just ownership of the classroom, but being stewards to their fellow peers within the classroom? And I ask all these questions and I'm not quite sure, which I guess that doesn't make this a very great reflection, but these are things that I pulled from, researching my demographics here of my school and the community, and then also just sitting on some of the stuff that I read this week for this class. So here are my resources, my references. And yeah, I had an interesting time doing this. I've dived a little bit before into the demographics of my district, but not specifically my school. So it was interesting to get to do this, especially at the beginning of the school year.